Module 3. Managing the Teaching and Learning Process Part 1. Teachers and Learners Language in the Classroom. Unit 26. Using language appropriately for a range of classroom functions. Using language appropriately means we use language in the classroom which best suits the learners and the situation. Classroom functions are the purposes for which teachers and learners use language in the classroom. For teachers, these purposes include, for example, to manage activities and learning, to explain learning points, and to move smoothly from one stage of a lesson to the next. Here are some classroom functions that are often used by the teacher. Instructing. We give instructions, i.e., tell learners what to do, at different stages of the lesson. Explaining. We might explain to learners how to do an activity, how to organize a project they are doing, the meaning of vocabulary, or why a correction is needed. Narrating is telling a story or talking about something that has happened. In the primary classroom, we often tell stories to learners. In secondary and adult classrooms, we may tell stories too, but we might more often talk about past experiences and things that have happened in our lives. Eliciting is when we get information from our learners rather than giving it to them. This information can be about topics or language. For example, we can show learners a picture and ask, "What can you see in the picture?" We can also ask learners to give us general information, e.g., what a certain animal eats. Prompting learners. Prompting is when we say something to help learners think of ideas, or to remember a word or phrase by giving them part of it. For example, we could say to learners at the start of a storytelling activity, "You could start the story with this picture." Correcting. We can correct learners by using language to indicate where or how they have made a mistake. Checking learning. We check learning all the time during our lessons, but we do this most often after we have presented new language, and at the end of a lesson to give us information for planning the next lessons. We can use concept questions to check learners' understanding. For example, "Can anyone give me a sentence using this word?" Conveying the meaning of new language. When we convey meaning, we show the meaning of new words or structures. We can do this in a number of ways, such as bringing in realia, using mime, or by asking concept questions. We may want to explain the meaning, to demonstrate it, or in some situations where the meaning is very difficult to explain in English, to translate it. Unit 27. Identifying the functions of learners' language. How do we identify the functions of learners' language? The functions of learners' language are the purposes for which learners use language in the classroom. These purposes include taking part in tasks and activities, asking questions of the teacher, interacting with each other. Examples of the functions of learners' language are asking for clarification from the teacher or other learners, and checking information or understanding. Read through this description of a lesson. There are examples of learners' language functions for each stage. Learners' language functions. Greeting. Asking for clarification. Checking information and understanding. Saying goodbye. Teachers and learners actions. The teacher enters the classroom and the learners say, "Good morning." The teacher hands out a reading text and gives learners instructions for the reading task. The learners check the instructions with the teacher by asking, "Can you explain that again, please?" What do we have to do? The learners complete the reading task individually. The learners check their answers in pairs. They say, e.g., "What answer do you have for number 4? I don't understand the meaning of this word. Do you know what it means?" The teacher checks the answers. The lesson ends. The learners say goodbye to each other and to the teacher. Learners need a range of classroom language so that they can interact appropriately with each other and with the teacher. The language that learners need for interacting with each other may sometimes be quite formal, and at other times more relaxed, depending on who is in the group. The language they need for interacting with the teacher is often neutral or more formal. Learners need to know special words and phrases for certain games and activities. For example, "It's my turn." "It's your turn." I'm first. After you. I've won. We need to teach our learners the language for a range of learners' classroom functions. We also need to teach them to understand the language for a range of teacher classroom functions. Unit 28. Categorizing learners' mistakes. How do we categorize learners' mistakes? Mistakes show problems either with accuracy, for example, using the correct form of the language, or with communication, for example, sharing information clearly. Learners can make oral or written mistakes. Oral mistakes are mistakes learners make when they are speaking. They make mistakes in the accuracy of, for example, grammar, pronunciation, or vocabulary, or in the degree of formality of the language they use. In written language, learners may make mistakes, for example, in grammar, spelling, paragraphing, ordering of information, or punctuation. Learners' mistakes can be errors or slips. Learners are usually able to correct slips themselves. Appropriacy. Example 2 contains an example of inappropriate language. Although example 2 is accurate, there is a problem with appropriacy. It is rude to say, "shut up," in the classroom. The learner should have said, "Can you be quiet, please?" or something similar. Written mistakes. As with oral mistakes, these can also be categorized into slips or errors in accuracy or appropriacy, or errors in communication. There are different reasons for the mistakes that learners make. For example, they may not have learned the word or the structure yet. They may be using a word or structure from their first language by mistake. They may have been introduced to the language, but may still need more time to process it or practice using it. They may have great difficulty making certain sounds. They may have writing or spelling problems in their first language. They may need more time to check and edit their writing.